All I know is when I got ready to grow my own food, I wanted fresh salsa and homemade spaghetti sauce, but I had no idea which tomatoes to purchase. Everything was so confusing and convoluted, and everyone had their favorite variety. I just wanted to know which tomato to grow to give me what product I wanted on the end. So that's the purpose of this series, to help you grow what you eat. But in order to do that, you've got to learn how to decipher through some of the gobbledygook that you may find in the information you're trying to sort through to get exactly to what it is you want to grow. So tomatoes are in the Solanaceae family, or the Solanaceae family. Fruit in the Solanaceae family are also referred to as nightshade. Other fruit in this family include things like peppers, eggplant, potato, tobacco, and of course, what we're going to talk about today, the humble tomato. Now, tomatoes are an annual plant. And what that means is you're going to have to plant them season to season. They won't come back year after year. Although, with that being said, I found that tomatoes are the most notorious volunteer plants that I get, not only in my garden, but all over the property. And that's because the squirrels and the birds, well, they love a homegrown tomato as well, and they leave their little evidence of it everywhere. So what happens is, when they're dropping settle, they will get buried or somehow covered, and they will basically just lay dormant until the next season. And then the next season you'll have a tomato plant that grows up out of seemingly nowhere, a volunteer plant. Now, when you start trying to sort through your catalog and your seed packets, there's some terminology that we need to talk about. The first one is going to be determinate versus indeterminate. Determinate varieties are going to be your bush varieties. And there's no staking generally required for these varieties. And they also have a short time to maturity. Versus your indeterminate. And these are going to be your whole varieties, and they do require staking. The pole varieties are going to have usually a longer time to maturity, but the growth is going to be indefinite. Those plants will keep pushing out fruit until you either pull the plant or it's taken over by pest and disease. Now, you may be wondering if there is quite a difference in the color of tomato, and there is. I found that lighter colored tomatoes, like your yellow varieties, are not as acidic. They don't give you that strong tomato flavor. And then when you get into your dark reds and your deep purples, even black, that's where you get that strong tomato flavor. And there's a compound called anthocyanin that those particular varieties have more of, which is really good for you when you eat them. So whether you choose a orange variety or an indeterminate variety, what type of tomato do you need? Let's talk about that. Now, when I talk about types, what I'm referring to are slicer or paste. You may see cherry, and we'll also put grape with that particular type. When I first started growing tomatoes, I grew the tomatoes that I ate, that our family ate. So I would purchase like cherry tomatoes and grape tomatoes. I would always purchase those because I like to eat those. So when I started growing tomatoes, that's what I mainly grew a lot of. And even still, that's mainly what I grow, are cherry and grape tomatoes. But when I started to realize that I couldn't get much salsa or much sauce from grape and cherry tomatoes, I started to delve more into the slicer and the paste tomatoes. So let's just talk about that real quick. This is a paste tomato. You can see it's kind of squatty, it's really thick, it's very meaty, and the skin is very thick. Now, the way you're going to use a paste tomato is when you want to make sauce or something that's going to have a lot of thickness to it. It doesn't have a lot of juice in the paste tomato. Versus a slicing tomato, you're going to use these for fresh eating. So making sandwiches and salads. I mean, if this is all you have and you want to make a tomato sauce with this, you can do that. But just know that because of all the juice content in a slicer tomato, it may have to process a little bit longer. You may have to cook it longer to reduce all of that liquid. My number one rule is just put it in the ground and get going, okay? You can figure out what you prefer, what you don't prefer as you grow, right? There are two other types of tomatoes that I've grown. One called the ground cherry, and the other one a tomatillo. These tomatoes are quite unique because they grow in a husk, and they're really fun to find and eat, and they're definitely a good snacking tomato. Now with the tomatillo, make sure you plant two plants because they will need to pollinate each other in order for you to get fruit. So regarding diseases, two diseases that I've dealt with on my tomato plants are blight and blossom end rot. Now, I'm still trying to figure out the rhyme or reason for blight. I've read various things, that it's in the wind, that it's in the soil. I'm still trying to figure that out. All I know is that if blight shows up on your plants, pull the plant and throw the plant away. Do not put it in your compost. Don't feed it to any of your animals. Put it in the trash and send it on its way, because that will continue to live in your garden if you don't get rid of it. And the blossom end rot, that is a calcium deficiency. And the way that we remedied that from our first season of having blossom end rot was to amend gypsum into our soil. So once we did that after the first season, I had great success with not one tomato had blossom end rot the second season, versus our first season, my squash, my tomato, my watermelon, everything had blossom end rot. All right, we can't talk about tomatoes without talking about the dreaded tomato hornworm. The tomato hornworm, I sort of have a love-hate relationship with it. The love side is because I'm a sucker for cute things, and they're just absolutely cute. Those little fat wormy things on your plant that actually decimate your plant and cause total destruction, they're so cute, and I can't help it. But now that we have chickens, I don't feel bad about giving the chickens some extra protein when those guys show up. If you'd like to see our adventures in tomato hornworm hunting, I'll provide a card at the top for you. So I know that tomatoes is that fruit. When anyone thinks about homegrown fruit, they think about tomatoes. And it's true, there really is nothing like a homegrown tomato. You want to make sure you're not overwatering it so that you can get that nice acidic tomato flavor. And you want to make sure that you just pay attention to your plants, because they will tell you what they need. So when you're looking through your catalogs, you're going to find that there are hundreds of varieties of tomatoes. Between the different growth habits and the varieties and the types, there's a lot. Even Territorial Seeds in their catalog, they have over 10 pages of tomatoes. And in the big whole seed catalog from Baker Creek, there's over 30 pages of just tomatoes. If you need help finding some seed providers, go ahead and check out this next video. Well, we'll see you soon, family. Peace.